Okay, Jane has sent me the file and I'm just opening it. Let me find. Okay. Okay. Movement practice score. Perhaps you could begin around the rudder of light. Perhaps you could move with me. Perhaps you could be with me. Centre. I just didn't know how to get into it first, really. Lots of descriptive words. Glide, bone, skim, skate. I'm relating to softness, joints. Drop, really drop. It's quite long. Okay, so what I can't see is anything related to time, space, direction. I need to get in the space. Seems to be capturing like an essence of movement, which I'm starting to feel in the body. So reading let the back line ease the body into space. I've just noticed my back on the chair. So I took my first look at the score and it felt quite foreign. But what had I been expecting? I mentioned direction and space and time in terms of compositional choreographic methods. Almost them being a tool that would shape a piece of movement over the longer sense of time.
I was really interested in language and like the link between language and movement and that kind of like visceral language or whatever, language that you feel that can provoke kind of sensing in you.
What if I didn't feel like dropping, or what if the environment didn't ask me to run? Would I be really being true to kind of my present self, what my instincts and my gut feelings were? I found as I was even just reading it the first time, like touching like my own body and stuff, like I had this really like more of a physical response to it. And then when I got into the space to actually try and like, I had to really break it down. So like I took like concepts from each, maybe a couple of lines that you had, the skim, bone, glide thing. I was like, right, I'm just going to play with that. And I spent a lot of time just on those little sections in the studio. But still, when I came into the space to go, right, I'm going to perform this piece, I was like, I don't know where I'm taking this in space. I don't know what I'm doing. And I still felt like the movement was still really open, like I hadn't really set anything. Like knowing you as a dancer as well, like as soon as I read it, I could really picture, your movement. And I think part of that was like really trying to like stay true to my own way of being. Will I recall my history to collate the images needed to capture this essence? Will I be using my habit more in order to gain the material to respond to the feelings and the senses and the descriptive text available? How can I make this mine? The phrases was
Portuguese, I think.
It was Portuguese, and I was just like, I don't even know what that means. So like my response to it was like just to stop in the space. Like I treated that as a pause, as if to say, you know what, I just don't know how to respond to that. So, and I just, I didn't intentionally mean for that to be movement, but that was my reaction to it. So I thought, you know what, just go with what my first instinct was.
Have a few ways in, so you just don't have the score in to access what that might have been for me, but you have a experience of being with me, and also you've seen, and that's interesting because you've seen the way I move. Yeah. So you've got a visual of it, and I wonder if you've never seen that. And you are, I think that's what you said you were trying to do, like sometimes just go, I don't want the image, I want it for me. Yeah. Which I think, was, I get that score was super personal. It was me documenting something about me.
I could really sense that because at points of it I was going, this isn't quite the way I move. Like, how do I access this feeling? Or what does bone and skim and, what does that mean to me? Once I began to explore what skim or energy meant in the body, I found myself noticing pathways, speeds, directions and details that began to make it my own. Jane hadn't told me what pathway this went on. Jane didn't tell me how quick to go. This led me to set my own spatial score alongside Jane's to identify where I was in space while exploring the movement. A spatial design that looked at the direction of the movement, and I took keywords from each movement area that would help me memorise and trigger a chronological pattern. So moving from 1 to 2 all the way through to 8, I'd set points in space where I aim to get to. As I travelled to space 2, which is at the front of the stage, I took on the glide bone skim. I was brushing backwards, I was dropping the pelvis. This brush stayed with the idea of the hand brushing down the wall. I was trying to imagine and keep with the sensation of that texture of the wall to affect the quality of the movement and the brush. I noticed that I didn't run. I was fine to let this go. Because what I did see was the audience for the first time. And this made me smile. I allowed this looking to take focus on my hand, which initiated the next part of the movement. Using the hand to create touch on the base of my back, creating a brushing quality that developed into a circling pattern. Spine, fingers widening the back. Seeing the space from the corner, I took long range focus. Letting go, no pause. Shift back. See something. Where was my focus? I took it out, long range. I saw the wall, the lights. I thought of the light shining on my skin, raining down my body and sinking me towards the ground. Jane described initiated movement, exploring fingers, shoulders. I followed her order, keeping with the quick shifting patterns of the eyes, using this to help the initiation. I wanted to make each gesture big and getting smaller and smaller so that I could eventually slow and locate my centre. Did you start with the body? Did it come improvisationally and then you chose to set elements within that? How were you capturing what you were noticing?
So when I performed that score was developed through me investigating my ways of moving. So I kind of had lots of different things that I've looked at and questioned in my own practice, but what I want this score to do is to provide access to an exploration and a process and a feeling that it was that I've experienced for that person in their own interpretation. So, what is the purpose of your score? So I was challenging myself to ask myself these questions and kind of explore them through improvisation. Some I kind of knew the answer to straight away because I'd had to articulate them to other people, and some I was like, what am I considering? I don't know, in terms of how is space used, or rhythm, music. I actually don't have a link to rhythm. Is it about an internal rhythm? What do I use? Do I use all those kinds of things? So I investigated, and that kind of that score, I guess, came out of there.
Fly, fall, grab, give in. I really wanted to push my physicality in and out of the floor, use momentum, taking risk, stumbling and laughing internally, wanting to try again, losing sight. Where was I in space? Where was my balance? I didn't feel like I was in control. I tried this again and again. I repeated it. I chose to repeat it. What was I holding on to? Technical clarity? Speed? I actually slowed down. The momentum was lost, but I was still moving in and out of the floor. The legs were weak, the thighs were shaking. I continued slowing until I reached the floor.
I wanted to focus on how is it that I move? What is this kind of movement vocabulary? And part of it was because I've been teaching technique studio practice, and I'm going, what am I teaching?
Yeah.
Like, what have I got to share with these younger dancers? I don't have a technique. I don't teach Cunningham or this or that or the other. So what is it? What are the principles of the way that I move and that I feel are important, that I value, that I'm trying to constantly develop? So that score came out of a whole investigation into that, basically. So it was about a way for me of, I was sharing my movement research, if you like, on a very physical kind of level.
And the language was almost like, you can really, you have a real image of that physicality of it.
Yeah. Yay, that feels exciting. And how does someone have access, not as an audience member, to what something looked like or how it might have been composed, but actually that felt experience that the performer had? So that feels exciting for me that you kind of tested that out, and it seems to have satisfied that in a way.
The breath. Noticing the breath. My focus is above me. I follow the ceiling lines until I reach the first person in the audience. The top of their head, their forehead, their nose. Finding something small to draw my attention to. It made me notice my own nose. I dive my head towards the floor to feel a sensation, a pressure, a touch. Coming back up, I could still feel that touch on my nose. And I began to explore seeing the audience as a way to move back in space, making them be with me. I took my focus back to the hand on the back wall. I took one last look at the audience. Stay connected.